always like really like kind of up themselves and snooty, and the person's trying to speak French to them, and then they're just like judging them for like mispronouncing.
And we're live. Come on, come all. Nothing but love, nothing but respect. Say hi. I've got Eggs for Wrecking Kuma with me.
Hello.
Hello.
We're doing this a little later than normal. It is Monday, so we're actually going to be using the official viz for this discussion. Way too much stuff going on around the holidays at the moment. I'm sure everyone is busy, so trying to make sure to do these on the weekends has been definitely difficult, but at least we're catching up even if we don't get it done immediately. Um, I haven't spoken to either of you guys about the chapter. How do you like the chapter?
It's it's slow but progressive. That's how I would put
Yeah,
it.
that's it. It's a long wait for a little bit of progress. Is how it feels. It's feeling to me like how Dressrosa felt.
Really?
Yes, I'm getting a very much Dressrosa pacing vibes.
Yeah, like I
I
know where they're going, and I'm just waiting for them to get there. But every chapter that happens, it's like a small step towards that destination, rather than okay, we're there now. Because I feel like in Wano, like obviously we knew they were going to fight and Luffy was eventually going to win, but it really did feel like every chapter was like, I don't know what's going to happen next chapter. Like, I don't know if Luffy's going to get taken out again for like the third or fourth time, or if like Luffy's going to start getting hits in, or if we're going to cut over to Zoro's fight, or if we're going to cut over to Sanji's fight. But in this one, it's kind of like we
uh,
just sort of know what's going to happen. We're just waiting for it to happen.
I I have to ask them what is it that you think is going to happen because I think I think there's less than 10 chapters in this arc left.
Yeah, I could see that.
I would say 5 to 8 chapters for me.
5 to 8.
Yeah,
Um
5 to 8.
I I think especially with the big news that was sort of dropped in this chapter in a really subtle way, I think we're going to be getting out of here pretty soon, but it's going to sort of be the reverse of it's going to be the reverse of like going from Punk Hazard to Dressrosa to Zoe, where it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be like we're going to run away for a little bit, even though we're a Yonko crew now, just because it's like we don't want to start a random fight for no reason, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
they are fresh out of Wano. I don't think that they're really keen on going into another all-out war, especially with the government, because it is a government-affiliated island.
that being said, as well, though, I think the fandom at the moment is very divided on Rob Lucci and whether or not people think he stands any chance of being any sort of
Yes,
threat here.
it's
So I've got to ask both of you, which side of the spectrum do you guys sit on?
I
I'm
think Rob Lucci is going to be a villain similar to pre time skip, where like Luffy, or actually early pre time skip, I'd say, where like they're enough of a villain that like they can have a fight against someone like Luffy or whoever they're going to fight. I assume Luffy. Like they can fight Luffy, and it's like cool and interesting and fun to watch. But like you're never really thinking, oh, Luffy's going to lose. Like if you remember early One Piece, it was like, oh, he's the main character, he's going to win. Whereas I feel like later on in the series now we're just like, oh my god, Luffy's gonna get stomped by Kaido. Like, how can Luffy ever beat Kaido or Big Mom or Katakuri? Um, I think I think at least for this little arc, we're kind of going back to that typical anime. Yeah, the main character is definitely going to win. It's just a matter of time, but it'll be fun. Like we'll get to see Lucci's abilities. We'll get to see some of his cool like it'll be a good way to display how powerful a CP0 agent is, because he's going to have these really cool like upgraded versions of the abilities we've seen. I mean, we've already seen in this chapter he had like the Six Kings
The
pistol.
Ryokugu gun.
Yeah, which yeah, and so like he's using these weapons, these things kind of like casually, and he's like one-shotting
Well,
Vegapunk's dudes. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting seeing his abilities that are upgraded versions of what he was using back before when we saw him, and are also slightly different to what we saw from
who's who?
Who's Who. So I think it'd be really interesting seeing what he's got in his arsenal. But I don't think it's going to be like oh my god, he's going to beat Luffy. It's just going to be like Luffy's kind of mucking around and he starts beating on Luffy a bit and showing off his abilities, and you're like, wow, these are really cool. That's kind of all it'll be.
Interesting. I see the thing. Okay, first thing is I sort of. Do you know what? No. I'll hold my comments to the end. Kuma, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm more so in, I guess, wanting to see Lucci's progression more so than seeing an interesting fight, if that makes sense. Because
Mm.
Rob Lucci has been hyped up as being this amazing prodigy, and from what I've seen of Who's who has a better Devil Fruit, at least in regards to base stats.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that Rob Lucci has come up with some sort of way to either compensate or overpass his limited Devil Fruit, because I mean the leopard fruit, like it's an impressive Zoan, and it's of the carnivorous category. But at this point in the story, after we've seen just the the basic abilities that a dinosaur Zoan, that ancient Zoan are able to pull off, it's kind of like trying to ship out Lucci more so out of nostalgia than actually making him to be like this really hyped villain for this arc.
And just to
So
add on to that, I think like something really interesting is that Lucci and Who's Who were both kind of put on this pedestal as being prodigies and being super talented around the similar times, and then I want to see sort of like the difference between Who's Who got kicked out and basically had to keep progressing on his own by like
Yeah.
just figuring things out himself,
mhm.
versus Lucci, who has continued to be trained in these techniques and has like the actual upgraded versions of the techniques that you're supposed to have. And I think that's going to be the big difference between Who's Who and Lucci. And I do think that by the end of what we like, Lucci getting shown off to us, I do think that we're going to look at him as being way stronger than Who's Who. But like, he's just not Yonko level, like, you know.
I
No.
okay.
The torn sigh.
This is really difficult because it will go either way. You know what I mean? It's either he's going to be able to tangle with those people that are of that Yonko caliber, or he won't. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like it's not going to be like a very soft palated thing, if that makes sense.
So you think basically he's either just going to get stomped outright, or he's going to
So
be like
I'm
even.
leaning this towards context that we've gotten outside of what's happening right now, leading up to it, right? Where first thing, we've talked about this theory in the past, right? Rob Lucci has a badge with 2 stripes on it, right?
Yep.
Guernica, the guy that interrupted the Luffy vs Kaido fight, he had a badge with 3 stripes. It seemed like he was the leader, and Lucci's taken over from him since then, right? Whether or not that means Guernica was stronger than Lucci or not doesn't
Might have
matter.
just been more veteran.
Yeah, it could have been that he's held the position for longer, and now it's like Lucci could have been stronger, but just not, not been in the game long enough for the promotion.
To an extent, you have to just consider like leadership, like the ability to lead. And if Guernica's way more just experience in general, it's like, why kick him out of the position when
that is something that none of the other CP members have really showcased so far. They don't have those medals, as far as I remember, right? So it distinguishes him in that regard. The other thing is Sabo's current status among the world is that of an emperor himself, right? He's
Yeah.
he's essentially a Yonko that's subordinate to another Yonko in
It's
the
just hard to know if he's actually that strong.
in the eyes of the world. I would say at the very least, current Sabo is brawling with the likes of Law, Kid, Blackbeard. You know what I mean?
I would say Law Kid, possibly above Law Kid. I don't know about
I
Blackbeard.
mean,
I mean,
Law's
obviously,
tangling equally with Blackbeard at the moment.
yeah, but that's just what the showing was,
But
right?
but that's the thing, right? Even though they'll probably have a clear winner, despite my
Yeah.
despite my wants, these people are now able to fight together, and it's not like Kaido one-shotting Gear 4 Luffy at the beginning of Wano. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, that's the thing is like what I kind of see Luffy versus Lucci being is more like when Luffy first started fighting Kaido on the rooftop when he like went Red Rock and like hit him and everyone's like, wow, he's actually doing damage against Kaido, like, and it actually seems pretty hype. Like, wow, he's actually doing pretty well. But then at the end of the day, Luffy's just gonna be like, haha, this is fun. Gear 5, I'm fully healed. I'm gonna beat the crap out of you now.
Yep.
Like,
So
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that I need to call to attention because a lot of people are going to be like, it makes no sense for Lucci to be that strong. Comes out of nowhere. It's an ass pull. It's a retcon. This, that, and the other. Right?
yeah.
For the people that say that, I'm not going to say you're wrong, but what I will say is there are very far and few between seeds planted on the contrary. Rob Lucci's post-time skip debuts actually at the end of Dressrosa, where he follows the Blackbeard Pirates to Baltimore, the Baltigo, the Revolutionaries base,
Mm-hmm.
where it's confirmed that CP0 and the Blackbeard Pirates fought and chased the Blackbeard Pirates off.
Mm-hmm.
In practically every movie post time skip that's come out since Sabo's revelations, like since the revelation that he's alive, they've paired Sabo up with having a direct conflict with Rob Lucci. Right? It's it's hard, right? Because it's like the people that Oda's comparing him to is, you know, the Luffys and the Sabos. You know what I mean? The people that he's had a track record of having altercations with are Yonko and Yonko Cruz. We don't know who specifically fought who in those altercations. You know what I mean? But there's enough there that if Rob Lucci turns around and starts fighting Luffy, and it's like Luffy's fighting a Yonko, it's not out of nowhere in those regards. But the thing I have to preface is, first and foremost, what you've got to understand is Rob Lucci isn't a freaking brawler or a fighter, despite how well he was like that pre-time skip. He's an assassin. So the skill set of him potentially, like the skill set that may potentially help him reach these heights isn't going to be like the Kaido and the Big Mom being able to walk through a metric fuck ton of punishment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the drive and delivery to take care of a situation with practically speed. Efficiency is key for an assassin.
Speed and precision, and I mean, the first thing we see here is he takes out one of the Vegapunks instantaneously, right?
Yep, and he goes straight for the eye, a crucial point.
The attack he uses was his pre-time skip strongest attack. A lot of people have run off with this and gone, he needs to pull out his best attack to, you know, even compete post-time skip. But at the same point in time, it's like Oda never pulls out someone's best attack straight off the bat. Like, remember post-time skip when the Straw Hats all got back together and Luffy used Gear 2 and Gear 3 for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
And it had the exact same effect as this, narratively speaking, you know what I mean? So I think Rob Lucci's going to show more, but I think the direction that I see the story taking, and I might use this opportunity, we'll come back to the cover page, but we'll go the first page in. So, you know, in the first page here, how the CP agents are still at sea, right?
Yes.
Do you notice something different about Egghead Island in this shot from previous chapters?
it started to snow really heavily?
It has the number 72 on it instead of the number 66.
Oh,
Um,
that's actually a good point.
which,
Yeah.
considering Vegapunk already had an understanding that CP was coming after him to kill him, and the fact that he's a super genius and is in contact with all these people, I tried to wrap my head around what this number could be. Part of me was like, okay, maybe it's the number of people on the island. So it's like a person count. You know how towns have got, like, rural towns have got, like, population counts?
Yes.
I thought maybe it was something like that, except it was 66 a couple of chapters ago. Then the Straw Hats arrived, and now it's 72, but that doesn't account for the full Straw Hats. It only accounts for 6 people being present. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe it's the head count of people that are up in the top stratosphere of the island, up in the Egghead area, and it was counting the Straw Hats that went up there, except the problem is there were 7 Straw Hats that went up there. So, it's not a population count. What I think this could possibly be is an evacuation count, like a percentage count. And when that number gets to 100%, because Vegapunk already knew shit was going to go down, I'm wondering if Egghead, specifically
Explodes.
the memory section, right, the Punk Records,
Yeah.
is going to be launched into space or something.
Oh,
be
for
really
a
interesting.
countdown.
Because you're right, self-destruct sounds like a perfect idea until you realize his whole goal is to keep this thing safe
Yeah.
and provide to the world, right?
Mhm.
So I'm looking at this going, the Rob Lucci encounter, based on 2 chapters ago, this being at 66 and now it's at 72, the count is going up really quick. Whatever the mystery behind that is going to be... It's going to happen in, say, the next 5-6 chapters. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, I don't see the altercations lasting much longer than that. The altercations themselves, I actually think it's going to be this chapter coming. Maybe not even a physical alteration between Rob Lucci and Luffy, just more like a bit of dialogue, and then it ends with maybe them clashing, right? I think they're going to clash, but the important thing is actually going to be that Rob Lucci, the 2 other CP0 agents, and the Seraphim are actually going to have a conflict with Sentomaru and the 3 pacifistas, or the 3 Seraphim. And one thing to really take note in is how similar Rob Lucci and Sentomaru's moveset was pre-time skip, especially with how close they were to each other pre-time skip in terms of arcs, right? Where whether it was retconned or not, Oda's pretty much confirmed that pre-time skip CP9 all had Haki, right? The thing that annoyed me a little bit was at the end of this chapter, when we see Rob Lucci use the 6 King pistol, or the Ryokogu gun, right? We didn't see his hands when the attack hits, but you see his hands in the after effects of the attack. So we don't know if this is actually a Haki technique or not. Right? Because I had a theory a while ago that this might have been advanced armament Haki, and pre-time skip, his will was weaker, so his Haki was weaker, but he was capable of doing advanced Haki. Right? I could be proven wrong here very, very easily. This chapter pretty much says I'm wrong until we get another angle on the same sort of thing. But it's the same sort of movesets that Sentomaru has. Right? And I feel like it would be a really easy way for this arc to continue moving, where Sentomaru and Rob Lucci start to clash, while the CP0 members have to try and handle a Seraphim each, while there's a one-on-one Seraphim little bit of conflict, right? Resulting in Vegapunk launching Punk Records potentially into space, or potentially up to the moon. Weirdly enough, Vegapunk was introduced. His home island was introduced, and the plot of the moon was introduced all around the same time back in Ennie's lobby. And I could see potentially him like launching his brain into space like a satellite to give better coverage, like a mobile network. You know what I mean? And then he escapes with the Straw Hats, and as we know, there's 2 Kumas on the island. Ooh, 1 Kuma on the island, 1 Kuma potentially on the island. Like, real Kumas potentially coming. To be able to quick escape any of the people, or even, say, the whole Sunny to the nearest island, which... It's a toss-up where they would go if they do an emergency escape to get away. I would actually say it would be very interesting if they land at G14 or Full OLED before going to Elbaf.
Those 2 locations seem like the most probable, because either one, you get Luffy to interact with the proper Marine Force, which, again, is another easy plot progression. Or, Full OLED. Gosh, I can't even imagine what's going to go down over there.
Because I kind of feel like what we're going to do is... There's going to be 3 arcs, right? Egghead, another arc, and then Elbaf, right? And I feel like it's going to be 2 very quick arcs. So Egghead, something else, Elbaf, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we're just going to be snowball jumping between islands and doing like a 10-20 chapter stint on those islands with, a bit of world building. Here's what the island is, because Oda's just trying to rush through these at this point. You know what I mean? He's snowballing. So, to me, it's like Rob Lucci is going to be that guy to be able to throw hands with Luffy, but I think he's going to get sidetracked. And I think it's really important to note that, like, when Luffy's literally thinking about the advanced armament training, he thinks back to Rayleigh and Sentomaru specifically doing it. You know what I mean? So, it's already established that Sentomaru is doing advanced armament haki. So, it's like, to say that someone who, realistically, right, having one form of advanced haki and decent combat skill already throws you in that, like, 1st or 2nd division commander range, considering even out of the first commanders, not all of them have an advanced form of haki. You know what I mean?
No, they don't.
So, it could be a really easy way to have 2 high-tier people, see what they're capable of, have them potentially clash against Luffy a little bit, right? But also be able to be like, here's what they're capable of now, sidebar it, you got your little bit of, you got your fill of fight a little bit, but we're not going to have like a prolonged Kaido-esque kind of fight, let's move on, you know what I mean?
That's... Yeah, and honestly, have we ever actually seen Sentomaru actually go all out in a proper fight?
Nope.
No, yeah. And as far as we know, because Sentomaru is Kizaru... Sentomaru is pretty much under Kizaru as well, and Kizaru is an admiral. So Sentomaru definitely has a potential to be a very competent and destructive fighter here. Because I've always thought back at Sentomaru's representation, because Sentomaru was also brought along when Kizaru went to Sabaody Archipelago to take down all the supernovas. So he was already considered a top-notch fighter to be brought there.
Well, he was there specifically to test the pacifistas, right?
But the fact that he's also entrusted with them is also kind of like a show versus tell.
That's the thing where I'm like, if you're in charge of something, surely you got to be stronger than it. Maybe that's lazy writing on my part here. But if I look at it, Rob Lucci here is in charge of a Seraphim, right? If something comes along that could destroy the Seraphim, you're not going to turn around and go, Alice, your crappy machine that couldn't keep up, you're going to have to step up, you know what I mean? And with things like the Six King pistol, right? He does showcase sort of Duraneg-esque abilities which could fight people that are in those sorts of tiers. Same with Sentomaru. Sentomaru being the bodyguard of Vegapunk, right? Who, up until now, huge asset, but we also know was a huge asset that other factions wanted.
Yes, very much so.
So it doesn't make sense for his bodyguard to be weaker than him or weaker than his like own security detail, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And considering his own security detail at the moment is the S Shark, the S Hawk, and the S Snake, kind of makes Sentomaru potentially have a good look. Especially since, like, you gotta remember, we never even saw him use his axe. He's a predominantly, like, he's predominantly an axe fighter.
He did use his axe once when he slammed it down on that
Damaro
random
Black.
pirate's head.
Yeah. But that's the thing, you know? Like, pre-time skip, him fighting Luffy and low-diffing Luffy was him holding back, not using his main forte.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be a little power explosion or struggle here. But now that my huge ass rant's out of the way, let's go back to the beginning of the chapter and work our way through. Yeah.
Yep. Gladly.
We get Mads on the front.
Yes. Yes, we do. And somehow Judge has a bulging injury over his helmet.
Oh, it's the hallucination gas. There you go.
Yeah.
Easy solutions.
I actually really like the little detail of how they're both thinking of Dr. Vegapunk, but his tongue actually looks like a tie instead of an actual like.
I also like that this is his outfit that Kuma first showed him in his flashback back at Ennie's lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, Punk Hazard. Thriller Bark. There we go.
Yeah, way back when.
But there's two silhouettes there in the background next to Vegapunk, which aren't Caesar and aren't Judge.
Do you guys think that one of these guys could be a thin queen?
I was gonna say if anyone's queen, it's the one on the right. The one on the left, this may sound sort of dumb, but if it looks like anyone to me, it looks like the squid from Fishman Island with the bucket hat. Do you remember him?
Oh,
from the new Fishman Pirates?
Yeah, Kyozo, I think.
I'm terrible. Fishman Island is like my least remembered arc. I feel bad about it, but hang on, I'll pull it up. Icarus.
I want to say Kyozo.
Icarus.
Oh, Icarus.
Icarus
oh, wow,
movie.
I'm way off.
But although it does look like him, because he's got the bucket hat, and Icarus that we knew had a long goatee.
Mm-hmm.
But this one here looks like he's got the short goatee. If that makes sense.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's also completely possible that it's someone completely new and I'm completely off. Or potentially even in a really weird way, it could be Rock and Scotch. The Yeti Cool Brothers. Because
I don't know, I mean,
the Yeti Cool Brothers we know were at Punk Hazard and whatnot, and got they're listed as giants, but I mean we don't know their origin story. There were also the numbers that are giants now as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I
mean, yeah, I'm honestly throwing my coin in the direction that these guys are just completely like new to their own. Like, I mean, Mads is still so much in the air as an actual organization.
If they are new, I would like to lean towards the idea that we're going to see these people as crewmates of other people that we know now. Where they'll be introduced here as just like random people, and then we see like maybe part of the Cross Guild or something like that. They're scientist. You know what I mean? Because I feel like one really important thing to note is Vegapunk went to the world government. Caesar went to the world government, then got booted out, and then went with Doflamingo and backed Kaido and Big Mom. Right? Judge was going to ally with Big Mom. And we also know that Queen allied with Kaido. So all of the MADS members ended up allying with another major faction themselves after to continue their researches. You know what I mean? So I feel like if we do see them, they're going to be important going forward. Do you guys have any theories or any ideas about that, or not something you've really lingered on in this chapter?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of Mads, I've kind of pushed that off, mostly because I've been mostly self-contemplating about what could have happened in Wano instead. Like, I've been on this huge kind of like just mind rant about like
The downward spiral?
More so a downward spiral, and then not only that, I kept digging myself in deeper holes. And when I tried to think of an answer, I just ended up filling the hole and re-digging myself down in there.
Hey, it happens
Get
to
me
all of us.
started on Wano.
I think Wano was a great arc, but it could have been the best arc. That's the problem.
Yes, it was definitely. I know people might give me a lot of flack to this, but there were definitely a lot of, at least to me, there were definitely a lot of like 6 out of 10 moments in Wano
Look,
for me.
I'm just gonna say this: can you name an arc that had more? Not, it may have had one or two better, right? But can you name an arc that had more better moments? And mind you, it is like 15% of the entire story at this point in time, in terms of length. But, right, you got to forget, in terms of the manga release, Reveries counted as the opening of Wano. Then you've got the Yonko bounty reveals as part of Wano. You've got the entire Odin flashback and Roger's journey as part of Wano. The he laughed chapter, part of Wano.
But after all of that, though, Big Mom wasn't the main enemy, and I just can't get over that.
Hey, I could understand Big Mom not being the main enemy if she even actually had, if she even got the limelight of actually having fought. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if they didn't introduce us in the first arc of the New World to Luffy immediately making Big Mom the enemy, and then have him go to her area, take out the commanders, and then
Promise to fight her.
to go back and stop her, and etc. 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 I don't know. It was just a bit ridiculous. I can't get over it.
It hurts, especially when you go back and reread Whole Cake, and you're like, this woman did not go down easy. Like,
No.
they call her the insane big bitch for a reason.
To be honest, I think they did a bit, except for in Wano, they did a better job at hyping up Big Mom than they did with Kaido. Like, if it wasn't for Big Mom's like becoming Big Meme in Wano, I reckon Big Mom would have seemed a lot more intimidating than Kaido, because they didn't really show. All they really showed was like Kaido just beating up Luffy a bunch.
Yep.
Like, whereas Big Mom was like, she was like an unstoppable force. Like, they literally had Capone talking about all the different ways that he could assassinate her. This guy who's like an assassination leader who would assassinate agencies and underground gangs and stuff and take them over. And he's like, yeah, well, the only thing that I could possibly figure out on how to hurt her is poison under this very specific circumstance where her weaknesses are down. It requires this setup and this setup and this setup, and then even though they did all of that, it still didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, Big Mom was clean.
I mean, honest to God, especially with how I know I keep bringing this up, but Big Mom's backstory to me is so much more enthralling than what we got from Kaido's. Because I swear to God, for that moment when we got Kaido's flashback, that chapter dropped to like maybe a 3 out of 10 for me. But how brief it was.
3 biggest coincidences that ended up just being like so coincidental that it became a wasted plot point, right? CP0 in Wano looking identical to Big Mom's friends as a kid, right?
Oh,
the 1-for-1 lineups and that, even to have a moment where she could have like she could have had a moment where it triggered her memories.
Yeah, where she misinterpreted.
Because imagine, I mean, essentially the CP0 members were there to, you know, trade with people, weren't they? They went down taking someone else down with them. Imagine if that happened, but those events happened around Big Mum, right? And because they, even if it wasn't them, because they look so similar, it triggered her memory for her to remember what happened to Mother Carmel and her friends, right? Imagine if that happened, and that's what gave Kid and Law the opening to beat her.
Yeah, mental trauma will do that to you.
Because she's had a history of it, and as much as I love Law and Kid, and as much as they like pulled out all the stops, I don't know how many times they were like, "This is my last move," and then did 5 more moves, right?
They pulled a Kakashi with one of his Chidori.
Big Mum, who was capable of advanced conquerors and advanced armament, didn't use it a single time against Kid or Law. Big Mum...
Yeah, that was very odd to me.
Big Mum, who was capable of putting souls into anything, wasn't able to, say, counter Law's room by trying to bring... Like, there wasn't even a moment where she was like, I wonder if I can bring this to life.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Big Mom's surgical room? Jesus Christ.
Dude, I remember everyone going... When the last opening for One Piece opened, going, oh my god, is Big Mom gonna use her awakening to turn Onigashima into a homie?
Yeah, could you imagine just that, like, Onigashima comes to life and the giant skull turns into the ultimate enemy?
I mean, like, even then, it was like Kaido and Big Mom fighting over who controlled it to do certain things. You know, like, Kaido's trying to move it over the capital, but Big Mom's kind of like, I kind of need this to fight these 2 bastards. Right?
That'd be sick.
Words do not describe, and like even now we don't know if Drake's alive or dead. Like, do you think he's alive or dead? Because rereading the last couple of chapters, the Marines are obviously like, we don't know if Drake's good, but like last we heard, he was like pretty on death's door.
I would say if CP9 found him, yeah, they'd probably kill Drake, then they'd take his and Hawkins' devil fruits. Because I've pretty much lost all hope for Hawkins being alive at this point.
Wasn't any payoff for
Drake's been playing the espionage game for a good, like, I don't even know how long. It has to be more than 2 years, because he was also considered one of the worst generation during Luffy's time.
See, the problem I have with Drake, right, is he played, and like, despite the fact that he got caught out, he was a really good infiltrator. Yeah, like, he had the aesthetic. He would have played up on that for Kaido, right? Do you know what my problem was with having that plotline for him, especially when we saw that he had destroyed Otama's home village, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that he's a nice guy. I would have loved a moment where he has to, like, admit the effed up shit he had to do under Kaido's rule to keep cover.
A big moment of self-reflection.
Where he's like, it was all for this, and now my cover's blown. Like, that would have been perfectly timed with when he asked Luffy to join. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like...
Or you know what would have even been an even cooler moment? What if, like, Speed was running along with Nami, Usopp, and Tama, and then they actually ran into Drake?
What if Drake had have tried to take down Page 1 instead of Big Mom, right?
Yeah, that would have been cool.
And Tama's like, he's a bad guy too, get him. And Drake is getting attacked by the Straw Hats while also defending the Straw Hats.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny.
Like, I don't know, I feel like as long as Wano is, and as fatigued as people got with it, I feel like people wouldn't have had the problem of fatigue with it if, like, 10% more storytelling went into what we got with it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just
It's it's something of like being too long but not getting enough.
T's and I's were not dotted and crossed, is how I'll put it, right? It was all there, but we just didn't get the bells and whistles on top, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it causes it to suffer just that little bit. Especially when after, it's like, we got no repercussions.
Yeah.
Like, we glossed over the funerals, we glossed over the people finding out that certain people were dead. We glossed over Zoro taking double the damage. Remember that drug that made Zoro continue to fight,
Yeah,
but he
I
was going to
expecting
take double
Zoro to-
damage?
Mm-hmm. I was expecting like a recap of a Sabaody archipelago moment where Zoro was pretty much like crippled from inside out.
Yeah.
But here he is, practically like moving around. Like again, maybe they'll show that because Zoro decided to stay on the ship is because he knows he's not 100% yet.
I think it's more the
From
fact
the way that we were looking at him, he wasn't bandaged. He wasn't under Chopper's care. Like he looked okay.
I think it was more to create a bit of a power gap between Zoro and Sanji. And what I mean by that is Zoro struggled against King, right? Sanji, I say struggled. He did struggle, but Zoro struggled against King, even though it only took a few slashes for him to beat King, right? Sanji low-diffed Queen.
I know. I mean,
But
that's kind of something that I was a little disappointed with too.
But the thing about that is, Zoro will get a way bigger Haki balloon because he took the double damage. So his body's going to be like, you're getting double XP for this, buddy. So that growth, even though King is obviously stronger than Queen, it's just like he's getting those extra bit of XPs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Yeah, no, the whole dynamic that we've been following with these recent One Piece fights, I kind of wish that Oda broke the mold a little bit. Now, I get it, like, having First Commander against Right-Hand Man is definitely an essential for any kind of major conflict for an arc this big, but I'm just thinking, it would have been so cool to see maybe Jack, Queen, and King go up against, like, Sanji, Jinbei, and Zoro for, like, at least, like, maybe, like, 1 or 2 panels, just to show that despite being amazing singular fighters, they can still pull off greater synergy than
groups.
They're obviously, like, quote-unquote, like, perceived as stronger opponents who don't have that much chemistry to begin with.
Yep, I definitely crave more group combat from the Straw Hats. Especially, the problem is they're also powerful. The group combat just results in annihilating whoever they're fighting. You know?
I mean, heck, we saw more synergy from, like, Eustace Kid and Law, despite being from different crews than the actual Straw Hats who were bundled together on some occasions.
I'm actually surprised that we didn't get to see a little more synergy from the Beast Pirates. Specifically, maybe, like, it would have been interesting to see the Topi Ropo have a bit more synergy, despite them obviously all despising each other, because it would have been really interesting because of the plotline that was set up about them wanting to take out one of the lead performers. It would have been interesting that even though they hate each other, they work well together because they're like, I just want that spot. I want the clout. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But getting back to this chapter, Kuma continues his running and uses his paw ability to teleport to who knows where. I'm assuming
It's gotta be Egghead, man.
But we also find out that Seraphim Kuma has the paw fruit. So we now officially have 2 of the same fruit, and our first ever confirmed Paramecia smile.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good point. Also, could you imagine if Kuma transports himself there only to get transported back by the Seraphim Kuma?
Well, could he not just counteract that by teleporting it? Like, whenever he gets blips straight back?
And then he just just turns into a like massive ping pong game.
Yeah. But this leads me to turn around and say that potentially my boy Senor Pink is still alive. But at the same point in time, now that we have got Zones and Paramecias confirmed having been recreated, what is to stop a Logia having been recreated at this point?
Not a lot.
Even
Especially
if
considering that they already have like people like a Kainu. Oh god.
even if it's a lesser Logia, and we already know that Vegapunk was trying to recreate Kizaru's lasers. Could we get maybe an alternative warlord with Kizaru's fruit? Or could we get a Seraphim Admiral?
Seraphim Admiral would be crazy at this point.
Because the thing is, right, based on the ability to clone abilities, there's no reason that any of the warlords that have a Seraphim made after them won't have their Devil Fruit. So the only Seraphim that will need fruits are Seraphim that didn't have fruits, which is Jinbei and Mihawk. So we can assume they will get Devil Fruits, or will have had Devil Fruits. So Mihawks are probably the only Seraphim that's going to get a new fruit. All the other Seraphims are probably going to have their original user's fruit. The question then comes back to which warlords is it? Because Jinbei was included, so obviously it's pre-time skip warlords, most likely pre-Marineford warlords, so the original warlords. Meaning we are probably going to get to see duplicates of all the warlords' fruits.
I mean, we saw, what is it? Gotta go back a little bit. Where the logic one of Vegapunk, the logic of the Vegapunks. He was saying we're deploying S Snake, S Hawk, and S Shark.
Yep.
So we're still missing Crocodile, Gecko Moria. Do you guys actually think that Vegapunk did want a buggy?
Nope, at this point in time, I think there's 7 of them. I think it's the original 7 warlords, and I think the thing that we should be most terrified about is the fact that there is going to be a Lunarian, Seraphim, Moria.
Really, Moria? I would be a little more intimidated by Crocodile because he's a Logia as well.
Think about the idea that... Because you got to think, right? Moria was able to buff himself pre-time skip to be able to split islands with one punch.
Yeah, that's
now
true.
Include the defense of a Lunarian and the speed. Right? Now think about the fact that whoever he beats, he can resurrect.
Yeah, that's just brutal.
Now think about the fact that Blackbeard has also most likely acquired that same ability. So we've got the factions of the Marines and the Blackbeard Pirates potentially able to resurrect anyone that they defeat as a fighter for their side. We're talking the Night King. In the arms of it just being in regular Moria, it's kind of useless. We also know, though, that Moria used to rival Kaido back in the day.
Yeah, that's true. Having that potential in Powerhouse. Especially since the Seraphim take orders, so if you get a competent person to boss it around...
Well, if it doesn't have Moria's losses from Kaido, right? So it's not fat Moria, it's fit Moria.
Yeah, Moria with the chin.
Yeah, that could be terrifying.
We're missing the fact that he just released 3 Seraphim plus... what's his name? Sentomaru, and still at the start of this arc, he said to Dragon, I'm gonna die soon.
Yep.
So, despite having 3 Seraphim and dude, and all of the battle robots and the like individual Vegapunk robots and all the weapons on the island, he still believes that the CP0 agents are gonna kill him.
Well, there's more than just that as well, right?
He's also an old man who could be suffering from a plot armored disease that can't be cured.
Well, first things first, right? Jinbei Seraphim, S Shark, is number 4. We saw that when he was introduced, right? We see S Snake and S Hawk coming out of pods 1 and 2 this chapter, leaving Kuma to be S3. Right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the Seraphims numbered. Like we've got their canonical numbers at the moment, right? Although I had my theory about Sentomaru going to fight Rob Lucci, we also know that he's now officially joined the Marines as an official Marine member because he wasn't pre-time skip. He was just Vegapunk's bodyguard. There is a potential here that he won't be on Vegapunk's side.
Oh.
Because if the orders are coming from the world government, specifically the Gorosei, he may actually follow orders, and this might be part of Vegapunk's reasoning here, where he's like, I've got my built-in kill switches, they're going to listen to me anyway, I'm going to transfer their leadership over to Sentomaru, and I'm going to dip with the Straw Hats, and he can destroy my clones. You know what I mean?
Is Sentomaru just going to be sacrificed then?
Well, Sentomaru might take out the Vegapunks. He's either going to be ride or die Vegapunk, or he's going to be a ride or die Marine now. Don't you think?
I feel like him saying, get Sentomaru to do that, implies that Sentomaru is going to be on his side.
Yeah. That's why I theorized that at the beginning. But it could be Vegapunk with his big genius brain playing a long con in some capacity.
Yeah, he's anticipating a betrayal.
I honestly feel like Kizaru and by extension Sentomaru are like the strong allies to Vegapunk, and they're more about like the greater good rather than following Navy orders.
I mean, Kizaru's whole attitude, I don't think it really matches being loyal to Vegapunk, because Kizaru's always taken orders from the government, and by extension Akainu and the Gorosei. Like, Kizaru really doesn't question anything that's given to him on a sheet of paper. If the piece of paper says, go kill all these pirates, Kizaru's going to do it.
I think he questions it.
Yeah,
internally.
but yeah, because like with that said, Akiji also like wiped out all of Ohara.
Still questioned it.
Yeah, but he did question it, but he still did it.
Yeah.
And then ever since then, he's like followed orders. Like,
see, that's
and Saul survived.
That's the main differences I see though between the original three. Between all the admirals, right? You've got Akainu, who is just no matter what, it's for the greater good. You know what I mean? It's almost like admirable, the fact that he's got that conviction so hard, whereas other people would hesitate and question whether or not they're doing the right thing. He's just like, I've made that decision, that's the way we're going, right or wrong, we're all forward, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I think what people misinterpret about Kizaru, because a lot of people are like, oh, you know, Kizaru's just lazy, Kizaru just follows orders, he doesn't do anything.
No, I don't think he's like that. Kizaru's more like Garp than any of the other admirals. He follows orders because he should, and he will follow them without question. But like Kizaru in Marineford and Kizaru in Sabaody. Kizaru and Sabaody defeated all the Supernova, right? And then when they escaped, he was frustrated, so he took his anger out and caught, 100 or 400 pirates? I think 500 pirates.
500 pirates? Right?
Yeah, I think so.
So he was frustrated that he didn't get the job done. You know what I mean? Despite him having done the job. Then you see him in Marineford. he was the only admiral in Marineford giving orders to the lesser marines.
Yes, that was very.
He was specifically organizing the squads. Like, hey, giant squad, watch for aerial attacks. You're on that duty. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, like, I think the problem with Kizaru is because he didn't go for that fleet admiral position. People are like, oh, he doesn't matter. It's just, you know what I mean? They disregard him in that regard. Whereas,
I feel like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
his conviction was never specifically to lead. He just happens to be a good leader. I think the thing about him is he follows orders. He understands that stuff needs to get done for the greater good, even if he agrees or disagrees with it. Like, it's like his comments on Weevil, right? He's like, whether or not it's true or not, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is the results. You know? It doesn't matter if he's as strong, or it doesn't matter if he's Whitebeard's son or not. He acts like Whitebeard's son. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so he's pragmatic in that sense.
Whereas Aokiji was a lot more like Akainu back in the day. In fact, Aokiji's original sense of justice was burning justice. Right? And then after Ohara, it swapped to lazy justice. Right? What I think people don't understand there is Aokiji saw the things that were going wrong with the world government and didn't deem it worth the greater good, because he deemed the greater good the people, not the end results. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which is, when Akainu got that position, it meant fully accepting that it was going to be all or nothing. You know what I mean? There was that leniency that he was going to have had previously was out the window. And I think a lot of people tend to forget, like, that authoritarianness has existed for a while. People forget Sengoku's the one that ordered Ohara to be wiped out.
Yes.
And
yes.
Like, before the Gorosei specifically say it's beyond salvaging, kill them, Sengoku had organized and was moving fleets to take out Ohara. You know what I mean? So it's like, even though Sengoku nominates Aokiji to take his place, in the past, Sengoku operates more like Akainu.
Maybe it's also, yeah, in that sense, Sengoku's also trying to make a last a last amends, I guess, to some of the choices that he made.
Yeah.
Because maybe he feels like Aokiji would steer the Marines towards a more morally correct path. And see, while considering where they weigh the pros and cons before they want to look at the end result.
Yeah, no, definitely. That is definitely a valid point for it. And then you transition into the new admirals, where you've got Fujitora, who's his whole blind justice. His whole thing is like, there are terrible things that go on in this world. We shouldn't be adding to them. We should take accountability for when things go wrong, and that, we're not perfect. Have that transparency and work through it with the people, right?
Yeah, because
the problem is that breeds fear, because look how the world reacted to Akainu and the legend of Akainu coming out of Marineford. The world didn't know about the Impel Down level 6 escapees and that, because they had to hush it up on that, because what the world saw was Akainu essentially got the credit for taking out Whitebeard and Ace, right? And almost took out the Son of Dragon, who was a notorious criminal in his own right, before Blackbeard orchestrated some crazy scheme to skyrocket and fill that role. So, like, the world came out of that, like, that narrative going like, Akainu, Akainu, you know what I mean? Whereas Fujitora is the opposite of that, where it's just like, that's not what happened. We used some underhanded tactics. We got to accept that shit. We don't need to be proud of it, but we just need to take accountability for it. And then you've got the flip side of that with Green Bull now, where it's hard to see whether or not Green Bull believes the rhetoric he's spewing. Because he's got the conviction of an admiral, but we based on that conviction, we've never seen his conviction tested like all the other admirals. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people brush off that scene of how impactful, at least in terms of both a political and how the Marines are seen on a front face, because him admitting that the Marines were at fault, and not only that, but revealing the damage that Domingo did under a government position while Akainu was in charge,
Yep.
like the effects of how much face the Marines lost due to that incident is insane. But again, yeah, from Fujitora's point of view, it's a necessary recuperance because they've been doing that for how long, and so many of the smaller nations have been suffering from it.
If that incident didn't happen, I genuinely don't think the warlords would have been abolished.
No, they wouldn't, because
And
as great of a king as as great of a person that Nefertari Cobra is, he's only one king among how many,
yeah,
and without another like
170.
personal, yeah, 117, and without like, again, like without another person's personal backing in terms of how much destruction and how much chaos, yeah, I genuinely think the warlords would have still been instated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even now, think about how the world government would have been situationally if they didn't abolish the warlords when they did. Because they've got including the fleet admiral, they've got 4 admirals, right? We've got 24 confirmed vice admirals, right? You've still got the entire giant squad. You've got the original 20 plus pacifistas, plus the new 7 seraphim, right? Plus the 7 warlords, plus well and truly over 100,000 marines.
Yep, and even fodder takes energy to take out.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why Onigashima took so long. And, I mean, we're getting to the point now where it's like, as much as I don't, like, it annoys me that some people didn't pass out from Konkurosaki, but we're getting to the point where it's like, some of these people are veterans and they don't pass out from Konkurosaki, even from a Yonko.
Which is great.
Some of the fodder, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, realistically, my perspective would have been when the scabbards stabbed through Kaido and Kaido went flying down, that would have been the perfect opportunity for Luffy and Kid to unleash Conquerors and knock out the fodder. To get an early start on a victory, you know what I mean? But we had a long drawn out war, played a little bit of shogi, and we won. Going back to the point though, originally, so we can now create paramecia fruits, which confirms to me personally that all devil fruits are science-based. Ancient Kingdom science that seems magical to us. Vegapunk's the only person close enough to understanding their technology, but even he is still a couple hundred years away from achieving perfection from their technology.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm also still of the fact that maybe devil fruits were always around and the ancient kingdom just happened to discover them first. And like learn from them and also create the artificial devil fruits that Vegapunk is making. Because there's still no explanation as to how a devil fruit, when a person dies, it's still able to reincarnate itself into another vessel, right? Or has that been explained?
No, it hasn't been explained. It's been shoddily explained as a soul.
Yeah, that to me seems more like a supernatural ability than a science-based one. Because we don't have multiple fruits coming out. It's always just this one. Again, Vegapunk is an exception because he's learned how to replicate it. but I look at it more of like, I say like the apple already existing and farmers just being able to move the apple seeds.
Can I put a hypothetical theory in your
Breeding
mind
stuff.
here? If they say the devil fruits are pure science, that means science allows someone to actually confirm, interact, and manipulate souls in the One Piece verse.
Yeah, that's crazy.
If that is the case, it could very well mean that the devil fruits moving on is an attribute linked to their soul. Potentially linked to how they're created. So it could be like mutating a soul. The soul always needs a host. So it'll jump to the closest fruit or the closest person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Which,
I don't know.
if it is science, by the way, can we just point out the fact that Brook's fruit means that the Ancient Kingdom devised a way to bring anyone back from the dead regardless of injury?
Yeah, that's crazy. Because Brook's only a skeleton because he didn't find his body immediately.
Mm-hmm. The soul manipulation stuff is what has me like, you're gonna say this is science? Bro, okay. Like, I would buy the Law's fruit, Baby Five's fruit, Kid's fruit, all these other fruits. I can be like, yeah, it's science. But it's like when we start getting into like the spiritual stuff, I'm like, shit, okay.
Yeah, like when you get into stuff like, you know, like the hollow fruit and the shadow fruit, it's like that's really like just not, that's not modern, you know. That's more kind of like medieval voodoo witch stuff.
But do you know what the problem is with that as well? Even look at the shadow fruit, right? Vegapunk confirms that lineage factor includes memories in your DNA, yeah? Like,
Whoa.
we had him talk about this with the Seraphims being able to replicate their original owners' fighting styles, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So the problem, I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry.
It's all good. Give yourself a minute.
Souls, devil fruits. Genetic memory. The shadow fruit, right? That links back to how the shadow fruit, when you attach a shadow to a zombie, it keeps all the memories and personality of the owner of the shadow. Because it's probably linked to its soul.
Oh.
So it could potentially be like half of the aspect of the soul. Or an alternative aspect of the soul. I mean, the devil fruits are able to create pocket dimensions. The shadows could be explained away as being like the pocket dimension of your soul. So you've got your soul that inherits your body, but your soul is what casts the shadow. And by interacting and taking that shadow, you're taking part of that soul away to link it to something else. Either way.
Actually, yeah, either way. What about you, Eggs for Brekkie? You think devil fruits are more like we're already there, or do you think they are a product of science?
I think they're. I don't know what they are, but I think they're kind of linked to the ancient, the named weapons, and things like the poneglyphs and like Joy Boy. I think they all sort of have like this idea around like fate and like destiny, and they all sort of have like a quote unquote soul, and they seem to like seek out certain people. Same like they've been mentioned with the devil fruits. I think a very similar thing happens with the like the named grade weapons. They kind of like seek out a certain wielder that can actually like hold them, and if someone grabs them and isn't really able to wield them properly, then they reject them, which is why a lot of them are considered to be curse blades. And then I think even things like Joy Boy is kind of like a destiny thing, and the Will of D. I think all of these things are sort of like almost like messing with fate, and I think maybe like the Ancient Kingdom had some way of kind of messing around with fate itself. And all of those are kind of linked in some aspects. So if it's all technically scientific, if they were like so scientific that they could like mess with destiny, then I guess you could call it scientific. But it also seems a bit more like voodoo-y
Oh yeah. It definitely
rather
seems
than
odd.
like raw science.
What are your thoughts for next chapter? What do you think's gonna happen? Also, just before I move on, I also loved the gag this chapter of Kaku wanting to explore the island, and every time he did something,
Oh,
something just shat him, and Stussy's just there, just laughing about it to herself, and like just calmly telling Lucci like why that was a bad idea, and it makes it so much funnier to me because Kaku's the only CP member confirmed from the East Blue, so it's like having an original Straw Hat in CP0, being like, I've got that East Blue kind of exciting, like I want to adventure energy, and it's just terrible for them.
No, it's actually pretty interesting too because there's an interesting line from Stussy that says this. Yeah, when Lucci says you're as well versed as ever, Stussy, and then she laughs, and then she says, "Yeah, this takes me back."
Mm.
So does Stussy already have some prior experience with Vegapunk?
I would say yes. She's also the veteran member of CP out of these three.
Yeah, because she's
CP0.
secretly a really old lady, but she won't admit it.
I mean, it's possible that she even has a variation on Bonnie's fruit. If Bonnie was here 20 years ago, you know what I mean? To keep her looking young, staying young and fresh, Stussy could have a connection with this place, or potentially even Bonnie.
Oh.
Being the queen of the pleasure quarter too, always looking young. There's that line from Dufeld back in Whole Cake Island where he was like, you know, she's like, oh, pudding reminds me of myself when I was young, and Dufeld's like, how many decades ago was that now, huh?
Oh yeah.
So her age is a bit of a mystery. So
She's also her mask. Is that also kind of a hint? I don't know. What is she? Is she some sort
I
of
think
fox?
she could be. I don't know why. I looked at her and I saw more of a creepy owl.
Oh, is she gonna be? Did she eat the owl fruit? Can she turn her head 180 degrees?
Oh, that would freak me the out if I saw her neck snap back. Oh,
Oh.
that would be fitting though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, so are we finally gonna get to see the post time skip upgrades for the giraffe fruit? Considering when he first got the fruit and we saw him pre time skip fighting, he was coming up with those on the fly and didn't even know how his powers worked.
I mean, heck, look, if you look at the panel when Kaku uses his Tempest Kick, it's already doing like a whole radius attack.
He was, to be fair, he was doing that pre-time skip, pre-fruit too. Like, I think a lot of people forget this man took out the entire Galila mansion with a Tempest kick.
Like, Kaku was already OP, and honest to God, I want to say that if Kaku did master his Devil Fruit, he would have beaten Zoro.
Oh, even if he didn't master his... Kaku, like, I think me and you, Eggs, were talking about this off stream at one point. Kaku used Iron Body twice against Zoro in their entire fight. Neither one of them were like the times that Zoro did major damage to him. It's like Kaku blocked Zoro. Zoro couldn't cut him, and then Kaku's like, "Well, it can't block me, so I might as well just dodge instead." And then like he got overconfident with dodging, and then Zoro hit him, and then he's got caught off guard when Zoro cut through an attack and then cut him down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That was a good fight, though. I liked that fight. Yeah, it is crazy. Thoughts on the Atlas? Do you think Atlas is dead or defeated here?
As far as the main fight goes, I'm thinking that Atlas is pretty much kaput.
Because that was also the one Vegapunk that was built for fighting.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Atlas is gone skis.
Also, I'd really like to point out, like, the way I read this, Lucci does the Six King pistol, it does a shockwave, then it breaks her eye, and then the robotic parts inside of her explode, causing her to essentially cark it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, like, the explosion itself wasn't part of Lucci's attack. That's just because, Atlas is a cyborg. If that makes more sense. All in all, though, it was a pretty short chapter. Weirdly enough, wasn't it?
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's what I meant. Like it was progression, but it wasn't.
with
I don't know.
with Kuma showing up, do you guys think Dragon will make an appearance now?
The only question is how, because Dragon's still all the way on that island.
We don't know Dragon's abilities.
That's true. He could come flying in.
He could just be sailing on the wind, you know. Um, it'd be very interesting though. I also think it'd be really interesting to see Kuma versus Seraphim Kuma, in some capacity.
No way I'm beating a Seraphim, bro.
You don't reckon you can beat the Seraphim?
Nah,
Can
man.
you beat you with
I
a
go
Red
to
Bull?
the gym twice a week.
Can you beat you but you with a Red Bull?
Beat me as what?
Can you beat you but it's you with a Red Bull?
Maybe if I go dirty and aim for the crotch right for the get-go.
Fair play. I also really like that Vegapunk has invisibility here, showing that he's mastered all the tech that like the Vin Smokes and the and like Queen has as well. You know
He's
what I mean?
achieved Sanji's dream.
The worst, no, he's surpassed Sanji's dream because he's technically got 3 of himself that are always in females' bodies.
Yes, that's true.
So he gets to live out Sanji's fantasy from Punk Hazard, but always. Because they all
But then
share
again,
physical experience too.
Yeah.
Because the 6th one is the digestive tract for all of them. So they share physical experiences in some capacity. But we're getting into some weird territory there.
Yeah.
There was... I can't remember what it was. I was sitting on a theory before. Oh! That is correct. Right. I talked to you a little bit about this, Eggs. I haven't spoken to you about this yet, Kuma, and I think I might as well drop it here. Oh, also, we've got Ebenezer in the chat. Yeah, definitely think the Kuma Seraphims are connected in some capacity, mate. Alright. So, Elbaf is obviously an arc coming up, yeah?
Yep.
Elbaf has been hinted about since near the beginning of the series, but as early as Little Garden, yeah?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with part of what Oda based One Piece on originally? What inspired him to actually make One Piece?
No.
There was a little cartoon that he used to watch growing up called Vicky the Viking, which obviously was about a little Viking girl, right? But the way that the Vikings behaved is very similar to pirates, right?
Okay.
We also know that since the very first chapter of One Piece, there has been a lot of links to Vikings and Norse mythology. Shanks being, Shanks' ship, the Red Force, looking very Viking in design. A lot of people have even talked for years and years and years and years about how they thought that Elbaf was going to be Shanks' territory because of the links with the giants and the Norse mythology, yeah?
Yeah.
What is, in your opinion, the most famous story of Norse mythology?
Probably Thor and Loki, right?
Thor and Loki. What about Ragnarok?
Oh, yeah. No, that definitely sweeps out. If I mention Ragnarok nowadays, yeah, everybody's gonna know what that is.
With One Piece coming to an end, we're in the final saga. One of the major parts coming up in the final saga is going to be Elbaf. Since all the giants are based on Norse designs and Viking designs, right? It's very evident to say that they're linked in some capacity. Yeah? The major story of Ragnarok, summoning up in super dumb person terms, just glossing over some major stuff, is obviously you got Fimbulwinter that takes over the land, and it's the story.
After Baldur is killed.
And it's the story of it's essentially the story of Loki initiating Ragnarok, in which the death of the gods, but more specifically sparking a war against Odin. Yeah? So let me go down a crazy rabbit hole here, starting off with the most important character of the series, Luffy. Right? In my theory, Luffy represents a mixture of Loki and Loki's mother. Do you know what the mother of Loki's name is?
Pardon?
Do you know what Loki's mother's name is in the mythology?
Frey. No, Faye?
No. Loki's mother in mythology is Laufey.
Which is Luffy.
Well, yeah, if you romanized Laufey, it'd be Luffy or Luffy. Which is...
Oh, okay.
Which is an interesting connection. But it goes further. So, say we look at certain characters in higher positions at the moment and say they're going to link specifically to specific characters and plot points in Ragnarok, right? I think the most clear one would be to say that Odin would be Im, the All-Father, the leader above everyone.
Yep.
Right, the person in charge. I would say that the Gorosei represent Heimdall, the all-seeing eye that's connected to everyone, right? That essentially watches over all the realms and is in charge of enacting Odin's will in those regards. Yeah.
Okay.
Going a little crazier, what I think is going to happen is we're going to get to Elbaf, and one of the most important things that we find out at Elbaf is probably the last road poneglyph, right? Which is going to lead us to the story of the Ancient Kingdom. I think what we're also going to have in Elbaf is the Elbaf's interpretation of part of the ancient history from the Void Century, which is going to be a prophecy of Ragnarok. How that will link to the Ancient Kingdom, don't know 100% yet, but it's very interesting that Roger specifically said there was nothing he could do for 20 years. So there is something at Laughtale that includes a timer in some capacity to a specific time period. Right?
Oh my gosh, my mind's exploding right now. Jesus.
So, if there is a theory of Ragnarok in Elbaf, how it could sort of represent in the mythology aspect, right, is specifically Hel and Helheim, right? In the story of Ragnarok, it's the dead coming back to fight against Odin's army, yeah?
Oh my
That would probably be best represented by the Ancient Kingdom coming back to fight in the form of the ancient weapons and their will being inherited. Yeah?
Yeah.
Take...
Gosh.
It gets worse. It gets worse. Right? There's too many dots to connect here. putting it simply, another character to represent here would be Surtur. You know, the god of flame, essentially, in that, right? Like the flame giant. Akainu. Him being one of the major components in the downfall of a lot of the gods, right? It's been a long-standing theory for many, many, many years in the One Piece community that Shanks is based on Tyr, the god of war. Right?
Okay.
Who lost his arm to, is it Fenrir, the wolf?
Yeah.
Which would be represented by Blackbeard. Right? One of the really important things in the mythology is that Fenrir was wronged by Odin, obviously being targeted by Tyr, right, for entrapment, resulting in Fenrir killing Odin. Maybe a huge reach, but potentially if Blackbeard has an altercation or defeats him in some capacity, that could fulfill that part of the narrative, right? I had this written down, right? There's just so many little things that connect with certain people and potential interactions here, because one of the biggest things in the mythology as well is the thing like the world serpent, right? I feel like the world serpent would be represented by Poseidon, specifically the ability to control giant sea serpents. You get what I mean there?
Yeah.
So, and there's a heap more. Like, personally, although Thor is like the god of lightning, in actual Norse mythology, it's more the god of thunder than it is the god of lightning. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
A big thing about that in the mythology is that thunder, that sound of thunder, is actually his hammer really heavily striking down. It's more about force than it is about actual lightning. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that could be represented by Fujitora and the gravity fruit. So the thing is, you got all these people linking up, right? All these different possibilities, their connections. Again, Oda does this a lot in heaps of other stories as well, where he'll take aspects of the story, and he doesn't do them exactly like for like. But there's enough there that you can tell that when the story starts being told, you can make those connections. You know what I mean? I mean, Sky Island, even though we didn't have any giants there, you had Jack the Giant Beanstalk, Jack and the Beanstalk. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There, you get to Impel Down, and it's Dante's Inferno, the divine layers of hell, the divine comedy. You know what I mean? He takes clear representations and clear stories that he's got laid out and connects them bit by bit. It's also very interesting that if Blackbeard represents Fenrir, right, and is going to be going up against Odin in the form of Im, right, the leading thing of Ragnarok is Fenrir-Winter, or Fimbulwinter, who is now the most important person allied with Blackbeard?
Yeah.
Aokiji. And the Ice Fruit. The guy that literally brings winter. Which all ends in one of the most famous lines, right? Because how Ragnarok ends, specifically, how it's worded, is Ragnarok ends with the ice thawing, greenery and lushness coming back to the lands, and the first dawn. All post-time skip. It gets hammered into us every arc, every opportunity. The dawn is coming, the dawn is coming, the dawn is coming, the dawn is coming. Right? I sat down because I've been doing my playthrough of God of War Ragnarok, and it just sort of while I was playing through it, I just had a few connections where I was just like, oh, this reminds me of this person, and it just sort of pulled me back, and I was just like, shit, this is really like a plotline that Oda has been like left hanging. It's something that he's never covered, right? Even though it's probably one of the most famous wars in mythology. It specifically links to a lot of people left in the story, and especially people of high power and high positions and stuff like that. So I sort of just was like reading those off, like those connections off to myself, and I haven't gone too much deeper into it. Like I haven't formulated a great way of explaining that theory. But at this point in time, I'm sitting back here and I'm like, I swear to God, the final war, the final arc of One Piece is going to be based on Ragnarok at this point in time. Especially with the whole Loki, and like I know we have a character called Loki in Elbaf, right? But like maybe he fulfills the actual role of Loki. But the fact that you've got Loki's mum being Laffy and it translating to Luffy, essentially, in Romanization, had me sort of sitting there just like, oh, that is way too on the nose. You know what I mean? I don't know. Poke any holes in that you want, because like I said, it's not a complete theory. But the more I think about it, the more I'm sort of sitting there just like, even if it's just how the Giants will interpret what was going to happen. You know what I mean? Because I feel I don't know. Am I crazy? Was that just way too?
No, I'm sorry I'm so quiet. It's just that's fucking. It's also blowing up my mind a little bit.
I need to go down a deep dive, because like I don't know nearly as much about Norse mythology as I thought I did. You know what I mean? Like when you start looking up stuff, you just kind of sit back and you're like, oh shit, I didn't know that. I didn't know that connection. And like I said, like obviously Oda doesn't do 100% links. Like he doesn't do stuff 100% like for like with other stories. There's always that Oda curveball of just goofiness, right? But the fact that the story opened with Romance Dawn, one of the first panels in the entire manga is a reference to Journey to the East and a Viking ship. You know what I mean? It's like the story literally open. Like Oda always said he had the end of One Piece in mind, right? And it opens with all the stuff that's being set up now, and all the stuff that's set up now can all link into those capacities. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It has me sort of like. It has me sort of nervous because like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking like there are certain characters that I really love in the story of One Piece, but they will probably have to die by the end of the series, regardless of them being big characters. Because if they don't, there won't be enough change in the world with them still present. You know what I mean? Im, Akainu, as much as I love him, Kizaru, Blackbeard, Shanks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It all has to come to an end.
Best way to represent it, the death of all the gods, if all of those people start representing different gods.
I am A-okay with them passing as long as we get a little bit of a fleshed out background. That's all I want.
I do want fleshed out backgrounds, at least for certain characters, but at the same point in time, I'm not going to be upset about not getting certain people's backstories, specifically because when One Piece ends, I still want One Piece content. I want those side stories. I want the world is still fleshed out enough that there are tales to tell. You know what I mean?
I will gladly read all of the side stories that come after. Dude, and continue to bring Oda income.
I feel like One Piece ends, breaks sales, right? And then for 3 years, 5 years after it finishes, it continues to break sales because all the stuff Oda off-screened, he ends up just releasing in like a special one-shot in manga form. Like,
or we go to see like the original 7 warlords.
Oh, imagine getting to see the manga fight between Akainu and Aokiji.
Yes.
Like, shit like that would sell like hotcakes. You know what I mean? Sales, you know, the One Piece is real. The shonen sales are real. Can we get much higher? More sales.
Good. That's the thing though. One Piece has always been freaking consistent, no matter what with sales. So even if they're not number one, they're still ranking in high bank.
The way I always see it is it's the most consistent manga, where it actually hurts reading other series sometimes because like people go back like people now that try to get into One Piece, they'll start at the beginning and they'll be like, oh, it's not that good, and they're comparing it to other series that have started in say the last 5 or 10 years instead of 20 plus years ago, right?
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, okay, I understand it may not move as fast paced as other series and that, but you got to think a lot of these other series now, they take their favorite parts from long running series, right? And they go, oh, I like this part of the story, but I would have done it like this. And they take certain parts and condense it down, chop it. So, like, I think one of the big problems with media at the moment, and like Marvel's a prime example of it, right? Remember when you used to wait for like 1 or 2 movies a year from Marvel, and it was the best thing that happened? And now it's like, I didn't get an episode of a new series this week. I'm shitty with Marvel. You know? And you know it's true. Like, how crappy was, like, it doesn't matter if you're not watching them week to week, but it's like when you want to go to watch it and there's nothing out at the moment and you got to wait like 2 weeks and that. How privileged are we all now that it's like, that is a problem? You know what I mean?
First world problems, man.
And the weird thing is, I really love the first 10 volumes of One Piece. Like, I think East Blue is really well done. I really miss the how do I word this? I miss the ruthlessness of Oda's editors in early One Piece. Because although the story is at its peaks now, I do feel like if these chapters coming out now were being told with a harsher critic for the editor, they could elevate even higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like One Piece from East Blue to Alabasta, great. Alabasta clearly the best storyteller. Like Baratier, Arlong Park, and Alabasta, best story points at that point in the story, right? But then you see a very clear transition when he gets to Sky Island, or Gyre and Sky Island, where he opens that world up, just that next step. His art improves significantly. Storytelling improves significantly. Because you got to think, right? Personally, it's not my favorite. There's a hell of a lot of people out there, right, that just go, One Piece has never surpassed Enies Lobby Water 7. Best arc in the series, right? And it's like, you go from that like first arc where he's starting to tell that better, bigger storytelling, those more complex stories, with better art in Sky Island, and then he just improves upon it in Enies Lobby Water 7. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, when people are like, oh, you know, you gotta read 300 chapters of One Piece for it to get good. I'm like, for me, One Piece was good at chapter 1, right? But chapter 100, 200, 300 are going to be better yet because you're still building on all the same stuff.
I think it's also just a concept with, I don't want to kind of like just throw it in the air like this, but I feel like a lot of people are more intimidated by the amount of content in One Piece. And since, especially in today, how more so like just recent shows and everything are trying to put it more so just in your face, in the moment, trying to hook you deadline and center right off the get-go. I feel like a lot of just recent like median stories, they don't take the proper, not proper pacing, but a lot of people are just more keen on seeing a fast-paced action over a slow burn build-up.
I 100% get that. And it's hard because it's like, it's hard to do a 25-year, 30-year epic. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's a lot of dedication, it's a lot of effort. As an author, like, I mean, I've even seen your writing, right? How badly, when you're writing something, do you want to just rush to the good bits?
It's yes. No, see, that's there are definitely times where I force myself to take a pause because honest to God, guys, like I can write about maybe, let's say, like 10 pages a day, but while I'm writing those 10 pages, sometimes I just look back and I see like sometimes I've skipped out like a whole week's worth of maybe travel or
Yep.
just something in there that I should have added and could have added that'll explain the whole pacing issue so much better. Like one of the biggest issues with me, at least from what I've seen for like some shows and everything, when they have a scene transition, right? But they don't give any hints as to like what the time has changed. Like you go from day to night, that's fine. But when we suddenly find out that you've skipped out on a whole like week
Yeah.
or a month or at least 2 days, like you got to be really careful because it's easier in a book because I can describe as how long the days pass. But when you're seeing it like in a comic book or something like that, and it gets pretty annoying, I will admit, when you have to constantly write down the time, date, and everything that you have to apply because it gets more so that you're making more so like not really a story, but you're basically creating a table of contents that your people are supposed to read through thoroughly first.
Yeah. Like you can't understand it on the first read through. You got to go back, reread it to understand.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Because when you start, you got to be careful when you're putting in dates and everything like that, because then people will start to think more so of it being a history book than an actual novel.
Yeah. See that's one of the things, and like Ebenezer says in the comments here, like there's another One Piece I can compare to One Piece in terms of writing, especially in recent stuff. If I was going to compare anything to One Piece, there's only two series I can really compare it to. That's Berserk and Hunter x Hunter. The problem is Hunter x Hunter, right, is a hell of a lot more tell don't show.
Yes.
To the point where from the manga format it suffers. Right? And the problem is with Berserk is the art's so good and the storytelling's so good that you don't appreciate it as much because nothing stands out as much.
Mm-hmm.
I know that might sound like an odd complaint here, right? But it's like if every page looks stunning, you stop appreciating the art reading through it. Like if you read Berserk in bulk, you start off going, the art's great, this looks great. And then it just gets to the point where it's just like, oh, cool spread. Yeah, okay, keep going. Move.
Yeah,
you stop appreciating it. Whereas like in One Piece and that, like a lot of people hate the art style. I think it's very different and it's something you grow to love. And then because Oda does pull out great art, when he pulls it out, it hits really different because you're drip fed it, as opposed to get to over engorge on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's like getting a 5-star meal with like, for an analogy with Berserk, you're getting a 5-star meal, but it's the same 5-star meal every single day over the course of a whole month.
Yeah.
Whereas with One Piece, like you get by, you have like these like 3-star meals, 2-star meals every now and then.
But
when he dropped that 5-star meal, your taste buds suddenly just burst to life.
Yeah, too much of a good thing, and like that's not to say that Berserk doesn't have its own.
Oh no, Berserk is definitely definitely amazing.
I love Berserk. I have my own critiques of it. Unfortunately, based on the material, it's probably not something I can talk about on a live stream because it'd probably result in insta banning. But it's definitely something that I can talk about more in Discords and that. Just because like the nature of the series. But right, the problem is with One Piece as well at the moment. It's like people look at it and go, "Oh my god, it's so long, it's so hard to get through. You know, it must be so redundant, this and that," and they don't look at it as one story, start to finish. Because if you zoom out and you look at the entire story of One Piece as a hero's journey, currently, it's almost simple in how accurate it is in the basic hero's journey, right? Like people now still go like Im was introduced way too late. He's an last minute ass pull. terrible, right? And it's like, we haven't even gotten to the part of the plot where we focus on Im for us to say it was a last minute arse pull. But guess what? At this point in time, Im's been in almost 30%, well, 25% of the story.
Yeah.
Im got introduced at chapter 900. We're now, at the end of this year, we'll be at chapter 1070. And I know that's only 170 chapters, right? But based on the pacing, the story's going to end around 1,200 plus. Mm-hmm. Which will mean a quarter of the story has had Im, like, seen. You know what I mean? That's not a last minute arse pull. That's like the Emperor's introduction in Star Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, like, all because he's only mentioned, that doesn't mean he's not also doing things behind the scenes. Because I feel like what a lot of people have to separate is we're only seeing the story mainly through the Straw Hats' eyes. We only get little clips and bits of everything that's happening in basically the underworld and in the Marines. So to say that when the Marines pull a really big impressive move to say, oh, it's Oda just suddenly like inflating them just for hype. Mm-hmm. Well, you gotta imagine the Marines are active on a constant basis. It's not like Akainu's always just sitting on his bum. Like, he's mentioned so many times how much he wants to just vault himself over to Wano and over there to get Luffy, but he's doing so much already with Mary Joie and everything that's just going on in the world that he just doesn't have time, as frustrating as that is for someone as strong as he.
We just get the cliff notes of like the most important stuff that happens. But like even the most important stuff skips over stuff like the Rocky Port. You know what I mean? We don't get all those day-to-day fundamentals and basic interactions and that. But like again, the first 100 chapters of One Piece is the prologue. Like, it's the prologue. Chapter 100, they make it to the Grand Line. The first 100 chapters is like, here's introducing the 5 main characters of the story. Now let's actually start the story. You know what I mean? Then you hit chapter 200. You've established the scale of the world in the sense that you've shown places like Alabasta. You've shown the 3 major factions in action in Alabasta in the form of the Marines, a revolution, and a warlord and pirates, and a nefarious plot, and the idea of the of the poneglyphs. Right? You go to Sky Island. You introduce the next thematic point. By the way, the beginning of Sky Island is introducing the Gorosei, right? Then you introduce the thematics of a D versus a god, and what a tyrannical god means to the people and the world, and how it oppresses the Straw Hats. Only to come back down and introduce the part of the story where we declare war without knowing that the people we're declaring war on are those tyrannical gods in the form of the celestial dragons and Im and that, but declaring war at Eni's lobby, right? Only for us to then start on the back foot of, okay, well now we need to start a catalyst of what's going to change in the hero's journey for him to facilitate, you know, the major transitions in their characters, being Ace and Ace's passing, right? So we get the whole Marineford stretch where it starts off, that saga starts off with actually seeing the gods of the world in the forms of the celestial dragons, right? Seeing all the corruption in that, and then having all that stuff gloss past from our perspective, like from the perspective of Luffy, but it all have the effect in the sense that Luffy loses Ace and therefore has all that loss, only for him to come back to do the second half of the hero's journey where stuff has changed, he's trained, he's gotten stronger, but he's still not perfect, to slowly build up to sort of, you know what I mean? It's like when you look at One Piece from that, and it's like, if you set every 100 chapters as like a step in the hero's journey, the way you can look at the series is like, shit, this is just like a 12 12-step narrative, like a really fundamentally easily broken down basic story. It's just super detailed because of all the other stuff that goes in with it and how it links to different mythologies and stuff like that. Like even Vegapunk here, right? He's based on Einstein, right? But then he's also based on who's the guy with the apple? Newton, Isaac Newton.
Yeah,
right?
Isaac Newton.
So he's a mix of Einstein, Isaac Newton. Wait, but he's also Tesla, Nikola Tesla, because he wants to give free energy to the world. So he's just a combination of all these scientists and that. And I was even listening today to a really interesting theory, because a really interesting talking point, because you know how Jinbei, the other chapter, talks about Vegapunk and how how Vegapunk's ambitions may be bad in some capacity.
Yeah.
Einstein was also the person that was largely contributing to creating the first nukes.
Yes.
In World War II. So this is Oda's interpretation of like the world's smartest scientist and that, but also from the perspective of a Japanese author.
Yeah.
So, like, Vegapunk's good intentions could have a very damaging effect in the story going forward as well. Because, like, the way that they're building around the character is no different to how they sort of built up the real, Einstein in the real world, you know what I mean? With having links to the military, being a great creator, but also, you know, being worried in that, and working with energy sources that were fundamentally dangerous, right? So, I don't know. It's hard to have a full analysis of it when we haven't finished the back half of the story.
We'll have to have a full discussion for separate discussion.
Yeah, because the problem at the moment is it's like we haven't hit we're in the back half of the story, but we don't know how long that back half of the story is, right? We don't know how long this final saga is. Is it 5%, 20%, 25% of the story? You know what I mean? So it's like looking at this hero's journey sort of thing now, and then adding in plots like this. It's like, is it going to be like Wano, where I'm theorizing more than what's going to happen? And it's just like, it's a cute nod, leave it at that. Let's not go too dark with it. You know what I mean? Where are we going to start tricking ourselves into expecting certain plot points that we're not? Or is it just going to continue that hero's journey, that stereotypical hero's journey, and it's not going to really deviate, it's just going to get higher stakes? You know what I mean? Because I'll tell you what, it'd be really interesting if, you know, the eternal flame that Vegapunk was talking about needing to make for a fuel source?
Yeah, wasn't there an eternal flame in Norse mythology too?
Yeah, I think there was, actually. I do think there was. But I was going to turn around and say, what if that's for him in the story? What if that's nuclear power?
Oh.
He makes like the nuke Logia. And it's just like a Logia that's just nuclear fission. It could be something crazy like that, you know what I mean? Because if devil fruits are man-made, right? That means there's a potential to make new fruits that don't exist already.
Yeah.
So there could be his big invention for the end of the series could be something like creating an infinite power source by creating a new fruit himself, and thus catching up with, say, the Void Century tech.
Oh man.
See,
this is a lot to take in.
This is what happens when I get an extra day to think about plots.
Now this is great. It's giving me so much to think about too.
At the same point in time, though, I could be just completely gassing out too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just gaslighting.
Eggs, you can attest to this. How many times do we say, whatever we think the answer is, it's half of that and then a right turn with Oda?
Yeah, it always is.
Like whatever you think's gonna happen, he's just like, I mean, yeah, you got a little bit of it because I drip fed it to you, but we're going over here now. Come on. That being said, though, we've almost gone for 2 hours. Is there anything you guys want to talk about before we wrap up?
Nothing in particular.
I've pretty much depleted my brain.
I've gone on like an hour-long monologue and depleted everyone, have I? It's what I do best. I would say for the moment, I don't have a safe answer on it, but the things to watch out for is that timer or that counter on Egghead. I think that'll be very important. I think it's also very important to note that once again, this chapter, sorry. It was also very important to note that they brought up G14 again as being very close by. One thing we didn't really talk about, but I also was like, what the when I was reading the chapter, was Cypher Pole 5, 7, and 8 ships had gone missing, which I thought they were in different oceans. So to me, hearing about them in the New World was like, what the hell? You know what I mean? But it is what it is. Apart from that, I feel like it's a given that Kuma's going to show up. The problem is, with the way the chapter ended, you have the Straw Hats running into Rob Lucci, right? Meaning Bonnie is about to run into Seraphim Kuma. And if the Straw Hats there, so Luffy, Jinbei, and Chopper, have to fight a Seraphim Kuma.
No, they're toast.
With Bonnie not letting them fight because it's her dad, they're going to be in trouble. You know what I mean? If she wakes up and she's like, you can't attack it, and they're like, I'm sorry, do you see this thing? It's kicking our ass here, especially with the Rob Lucci present. It's going to be problematic, to say the least. You know what I mean? So I think the most important things are that timer. How that interaction is going to go next chapter, I do not know, but I'm waiting on bated breath for it. And obviously Vegapunk's disappeared now, but he's told the Straw Hats to make their way up to the top with all the other Straw Hats, right? Which is also interesting because you know how I was saying it could be a giant rocket?
Yep.
Notice how the Sunny was up there as well. They took the Sunny up there.
Oh, that was nice.
So if it is a giant rocket, Vegapunk's telling Luffy, Chopper, and Jinbei to come up, right? Well, if it isn't a giant rocket, how's the Sunny getting back down to the water?
You chuck it.
Like, they would have to coup the burst off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or
probably gonna be a coup de burst to
or-
solve everything.
or use the weather climate to make like a bridge of rainwater to to sail down. That'd be cool. That's one thing we've never seen. That would be one thing that would be cool to see, like a floating bridge of water. Like, we still never got to find out what the bloody invisible bridge of Peru was running on was. So there's like invisible structures in the world of One Piece somewhere. Interesting. I'll have to think on that more. But other than that, like I said before, I don't think much of.
Ooh, wait, hold up! Just before we lose complete track here, what would you guys rate this chapter out of 10?
I think this was.
6.
I was gonna say a 6.5. I don't think this was a great chapter, but it wasn't a bad chapter.
Oh dang! I was gonna give it a 5.
Everything happened as I thought it would happen.
See, the problem is, like, it's not a bad chapter. Like, if this was another manga, I would be like, this is a great chapter. You know what I mean?
I'd probably bump it up to a 7.
Yeah, but for One Piece standards, I'm like, this chapter, the comedy, I enjoyed. Like, the comedy with Kaku, I enjoyed that, right? Narratively, we got to find out that you can have Paramecia smiles, right? You have Kuma moving to the island. You have Vegapunk getting his request accepted by Luffy to join the crew temporarily, right? You have Sentomaru taking control of all the other Seraphim. And then you have Luffy and Lucci doing a stare down at the end of the chapter. Plus one of the Vegapunks being taken out already. So to me, it was like, the plot moved. It was a positive direction. It didn't hurt the story at all. But in terms of One Piece chapters, it's like, we're at the point now where like all that stuff happening is kind of like a meh chapter. You know what I mean? Dude, when One Piece completely ends, I'm gonna have to do a review of all of One Piece per chapter, and do an official ranking of this is the worst chapter in the entire manga, and this is the best chapter in the entire manga, and sort everything in between.
Ooh.
Because a problem I have.
That's like a 12-hour Christmas stream you're talking about, my guy.
A problem I have with with mangas at the moment is with storytelling, I use 5 and 6 to say it was like an average chapter, like a medium chapter. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then I use like 6 is like nothing really happened, but the chapter was kind of enjoyable. If I start going the other way, it's like the story's starting to get damaged. You know what I mean? Like a character didn't behave like themselves. Plot holes, inconsistencies, damaging the story. I like to use that as a medium for the balance. So it kind of skews stuff. So it's almost like a scale of 1 to 5 for the most part in the positive range. But I am a bit more relaxed with that range for other mangas because I base it off that manga itself, if that makes sense. Like this would be a 6 for a One Piece chapter, whereas this could be like a 7 or an 8 for like a Black Clover chapter. You know what I mean? With all the love in the world to those other series, though. With all the love in the world. All right, I'm happy to wrap up there. Is there any last things that you guys want to say?
All good.
All good.
I really can't. I don't have anything to add.
No worries then. Well, I'm sure we'll all catch up again this weekend coming for chapter 1069. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Also, chapter 1070 will be the last chapter of 2022. So we've only got 2 more chapters left in the year. Stay keen, stay excited. It'll be very interesting, which probably also means it's about time for Jump Festa, meaning we're going to get another cryptic message for what's to come in One Piece in the following year. Considering, actually, do you know what? Oda wasn't wrong when he said Sabo will, VV will, Boa will. I can't say anything. He actually followed through on those plot lines. So
He did?
We'll see how we're going. Hopefully we'll get something crazy like we're going to make it to Elbaf this year. You know what I mean? Although the years of one is coming, it's coming. It's like the dragons in Game of Thrones. It's coming. Next season, it's coming.
Oh, God. Don't even get me started on Ice and Fire.
But, yeah, we'll, 2 more chapters left in the year. Hopefully it'll be interesting. And then we'll probably have to do our new top 50 stream. So
yes.
We'll probably do that in the new year or over maybe the break at the end of that. So in the next sort of 2-3 weeks. So start.
Hey, we still have to do our top 20 One Piece girls.
I know. But now I get to spend more time amending my list because I'm not confident with it. There are so many women in One Piece, and I forget them all the time. Like, I know that sounds bad, but it's like, I know all the characters.
That's
in One
more
Piece.
of a thing on Oda, if anything.
I know all the things in One Piece, but the problem is someone will mention one thing and you'll be like, oh shit, I completely forgot about that. Like, I think for me and Eggs, the people I forget the most that he's constantly reminding me of feats for is the Vinsmokes. And Dorian Broggy.
I love Dorian Broggy so much.
Oh, wait, are they coming back soon?
They're better.
Dorian Broggy for Ragnarok?
Hell yeah.
Maths. They have to come back. At least a few references in like back pages for those guys. They have to.
I would love to see a fleet of giants doing Elbaf spears at the red line. That would be beautiful.
That would be awesome.
Even if it actually doesn't hurt the red line, like if it doesn't actually break it, just imagine that as a barrage. You know what I mean? It's like instead of
Maybe
cannon
the
fire.
red line is the world serpent that eventually gets destroyed.
Well, they did say the in Little Garden the big red serpent soaked. Oh, the big serpent soaked in blood, which could be linking to the red line because it's a big straight line that's bright red. But we'll see. We'll see when we get there, won't we?
How much have we actually talked about chapter 1068?
Oh, we've gone on a hell of a lot of tangents and that. Like, I had to keep bringing us back to it. It was a good chapter. It just wasn't a... The most interesting thing to me was Lucci showing back up, Kuma on the move, and the Devil Fruit.
Yeah.
Like, I the problem is, though, I don't know how... Like, I need to see the extent for a paramecia that's been copied. You know what I mean? Is it weaker? Is it equal to? Do you need the DNA of someone that has the Devil Fruit to replicate it? Because, like, if they can start whipping out any paramecia, I'm going to be like, ooh-wee. Everybody better step back when bloody Whitebeard Junior starts coming out. Seraphim Weevil with the Quake fruit and some legs. You best fear that. Speaking of, still waiting for Weevil to come back in the story. Hopefully Oda hasn't forgotten him. If Weevil never comes back in the story, I'm not gonna lie, I'll sit there and I'll go, you 100% forgot about this character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Alright, that being said, let's wrap up there. We've been going for 2 hours and 10 minutes and I still need to go watch the new Rick and Morty episode.
Nice.
Oh.
Yeah, I just reminded you with a little bit of joy then, didn't I?
Yeah.
There we go. Alright, catches the next chapter. Peace, nothing but love, nothing but respect. Say goodbye, guys.
Cheers, all.
Guys.